So in the last video, we were making this little rolling pan right here, and we left off right about the point where we got the pan done. And this is how it turned out. But now we want to start making the legs. All right, so we're going to use casters. I think what we're going to do is we're going to use 3 casters rather than 4, because when you do something with three legs instead of 4, it self-levels. 3 legs will always self-level. Or well, not self-level, but it will self-flatten. It will always find flat for itself, rather than 4 legs where sometimes it may be a little bit out of stable or something like that. So I think that's what we're going to do. And then I want to put fairly large casters for its size, just to make sure that I can go over anything. I want the cart to be really easy to just move around without any real friction, because it's going to be a cart that we're going to use a lot. I considered cheaping out and using a smaller one of these, because I really feel like I could have used a much smaller caster. But it was only $1 more to buy these bigger ones, and I really feel like that was going to be the key here. Was I just want to make sure that I'm going to use it all the time. I want it to be very, very smooth, because I have definitely made the mistake of going too small on my casters. So there's a couple ways you could do this. This is about the size. It's going to be about our tray is about a 16 by 16 tray. So, you could do it where you just draw a circle, a 16-inch circle all the way around, okay? And that would give you, you would draw 8 inches from there, and that would be your circle. And then you would make all 3 legs. The other way you could do it, so if I come from approximately center, right here, that's 8 inches. Obviously, when I go to my corner, then I'm closer to 12 inches, real close to 12 inches there, okay? So why that would matter is if this was your box up top, your leg is not reaching out to its fullest. A tripod is a good example because no matter what direction you go, it's still unstable in some directions, but stable in others. So you could come out to 12 to maximize the stability, but in reality, kind of like the tripod, to really maximize the stability of a tripod, you have to come out farther than the base. But I think in this case, we're going to go with 8 inches. This is a very small cart. I do not intend to overload it. I have this table right here if I want to overload something. We're going to go with 8 inches, and I think that's going to work out just fine. On our tubing, since we're going 3 of them put together, we've got to come all the way around with 3 of them. You got to cut 60-degree angle on both sides of all 3 of them. I've built many projects like this, including the welding bed on my truck, small jack stands that fit into tight places, a gantry crane, and so on. The one thing that all of these projects have in common is that I'm trying to build them to fit my exact needs. And what I find many times is trying to fit something to your exact needs. It's very important to understand what is the most important function, because you may not get all of your functions in this tool. This one turned out to fit all of my parameters almost perfectly. It was the closest project I've ever built to coming out almost exactly the way I envisioned it. Now, I could have, if I wanted to get this exact, because you can tell I didn't get it exact, I wouldn't have used soapstone. I would have used a scribe, and then I probably wouldn't have even used, I probably would have cut it out with a Mataba or something like that. But a 60 degree is not that much off of each side, and my weld machine is going to fill that just fine. So in the last video, we discovered that this is so thin, it's going to be really difficult to weld without TIG. And I don't have any argon here, and I also really want to try to show y'all a way that anybody could do this, because we're not supposed to be this can be done with multiple types of material. It doesn't just have to be stainless. So we're going to try to come up with a couple different ways. This does not have to be high strength. So we may get a little creative in how we attach this. So we'll see. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to have a little piece. Maybe we should go closer to 8 inches, and you would end up with a 10-inch overall coverage. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go 8 inches this way, and then I think that's what we'll do as well this way. We'll go maybe 8, or we'll go 9 inches that way. So I think that's what will look like. Obviously, like we said, this line represents the size, and that will just lay in on the bottom just about like that. And I know that's plenty. I was going to go with just a 1 stub, but I know this is plenty. I'm still concerned with the TIG welding. Even if I get a TIG welder, it's just so thin, I'm concerned with it warping. Stainless loves to warp. So now that we've cooled down, we've turned it up, we're going to put a 7018 weld in all of these corners, and then we're going to tack this up and weld it really quickly. Alright, so we've got this put together. Got it all welded together pretty decent there. One thing that you can do, I don't have, so if you look right here, lay that to the side. When I get ready to square this, even my small speed square is going to hit that weld right there. The bottom weld is already ground off, so I don't really want to grind that one off as well. I want to leave it for some extra strength. So I'm going to take this small level. You can see we are level. So then I'll just put my level right there and make sure that it is actually plumb coming up and down. That way I can find my square that way. Alright, so there the top is, there that is. That will sit on there just about like that. So when you're making anything sleeved like this and your tubing does not fit perfectly, you don't want to make the mistake that they did here, and that is to go in the center. First of all, when you go in the center, you can tell, it's right in the weak spot. You can see all these dents in there, like it's just pushing right in the weak spot. But secondly, there's no stability this way, okay? So these things have a tendency to rock back and forth, especially when you have weight on them, unless you have them super, super tight. So if you go right here in the corner and you take your bolt and you drive it in the corner, you push all the slack out in all the directions, plus you're pushing against the part with the most rigidity. So drilling in the corner is always a little bit more challenging than drilling in the center of the tubing. This time I decided to try something a little bit different. I actually ground the corner down so that my drill bit would lay a little bit more flat. I needed to end with a 1/2 inch drill bit. So I think if I did this again, I would actually grind it completely flat, making sure not to grind any bigger than my nut. I'd put a small pilot hole, and then I would go straight to my 1/2 inch bit. And I think maybe that would be a little bit simpler. heard someone say something funny one time. They said, "Why are you welding on the camera where we can see the flash? Isn't that bad for your eyes?" It's funny because your camera does not pick up the same amount of light as your welding machine would put off. So it is a little brighter, but it is nothing like the welding machine puts off. But if it bothers you, close your eyes. One of these days soon, I would like to have a setup to where I can actually show y'all some welds underneath the hood. I take my time and spot weld all the way around the nut so that I don't mess up the threads, and then I go back over it with a good weld. Alright guys, so this is what I ended up doing. I think it works really, really well. It moves really well. I love that. I could get a metric bolt, but I don't have a metric nut is what I mean to say. I don't have one here at the shop. I don't see anything wrong with putting just a little bit of a weld all the way around, and then I'll just cut it off with a Metabo 30 years from now when when it's time to put a new caster on, if I ever need one. So it's possible that my brother's a genius. I told him that I was probably going to have to end up screwing this together. So I knew I was going to need some flathead screws. And I had a few, but what he had was these brass flathead screws, which was really awesome. But I was like, well, they're still going to stick up some. So he was like, well, it's such thin metal, take and inset the actual tubing. Make an inset in the tubing, and then because it's so thin, maybe it will actually squeeze in, and that's exactly what it did. I mean, I could not ask for that to be better. In fact, I think I like this more than welding. So I'm really happy that I did that. Flathead screws, I've never been a big fan of flathead screws for utility, but flathead screws are probably one of the most aesthetically pleasing screws. Well, realistically, I just don't think I could be that much more pleased. I mean, that turned out exactly like I wanted it to. It's beautiful. It rolls very easily. Of course, I'll take those tags off those wheels, make it look a little bit better. But it's just a nice little, easy to get around cart. I was going to center it. I decided to offset that tray that way so that it will go like tuck up underneath a vehicle a little bit better or something. So, but that just turned out completely amazing. I love it. So to go down to about this height right here, which is nice. I could have gotten it a little bit lower, but this is a pretty good height because when I'm sitting down here, I can still get into my tools. I'm not going to be able to get into it when I'm laying down, obviously, but anytime I'm sitting down working on it. But then I didn't get it any lower than that because I wanted to be able to get a pretty good height. This is a great height for when I'm working on my diesel truck or I'm working on my tractors. Then I can actually still get around it because obviously I'm going to need it a little bit higher. So I really felt like that was a good trade-off. For the most part, I think I'll probably keep it either somewhere in there or all the way down. Somewhere in there is probably pretty nice. The knob works really, really well. I need to do a little bit more cleanup on the knob, and I'll probably paint the base black, not because I have to, but just because I want to. It already looks pretty nice, so I might as well. It is a little, like you could grab this thing and it be topsy-turvy, you know. Now, I think it's going to be okay as long as, you know, as long as I'm careful. The only thing I could have done differently would be to just make those feet quite a bit bigger, but realistically, this is usually an issue anytime you opt to do 3 instead of 2. Like it can always be a bit topsy-turvy. Even if you come way out, it could still be like this camera stand right here I'm using, way out, and it's just in that direction, it's always a little bit. So, you know, when you do 3, you trade off a little bit of stability for the self-flattening ability and the ability to just move around freely. So, really happy with that. This is the way the screws came out, just very flat, very subtle. I like the brass. It really came out really, really nice. So, I am very, very pleased with it. I'll probably do just a little bit more cleanup, and then I think that's going to be it, guys.